Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 133rd film. It's the 2018 Indian Hindi language crime drama Soni. It's directed by Ivan Ayr and it stars Geetika, Vidya, Ohlyan and Saloni, Batra. I am Jesse and I am very pleased to have you here with me today to discuss this international film that I probably would never ever have laid my eyes upon if it weren't for it being a Netflix original film. As usual, I'm going to preface this by saying if you did want to check this film out, if it sounds like something that you wouldn't mind checking out, now's the perfect time to give us a pause, come back later on because we're going to jump into spoiler territory very, very quickly. And I'm going to start this off with my Fast Flicks where I do a quick little summary of the film. And this film it's about a police officer with anger management issues and trying to tackle the poor societal attitudes towards women. I think that's a nice little summary of what this is about and where it goes. So obviously there are some heavy themes in this, so it's not necessarily going to be for everyone, but if you're keen to hear what my thoughts are, then please stick around. And before we do that, I'm going to talk about a little bit that I could find or learn about how this film was put together. And I guess a really nice thing about this film is that every scene is taken in one shot. Really, it keeps you in the film at all times, and it was a specific choice by the director to understand the characters in this film, and this film does follow two female characters. They are the main two characters of this film that you follow this whole film, and I think it's really important that you're on board with these characters the whole way, and that was a really important choice by the director. I guess the idea for this film occurred to the director in 2014 when he was reading that Delhi in India was being put under scrutiny for not being safe for women. And this is especially after the 2012 gang rape case, which broke news across the world. I remember it being a big issue across media, especially even here in Australia. And the director Ayr, he'd read several articles and interviews about the Delhi police and was really interested in women officers' reactions to cases of sexual violence. So he went and spent time with several Delhi police personnel and just observed their daily routine in putting together this story. So pre-production started in November 2016. The director finished the script in January 2017, and then the film was shot in just 24 days across Delhi in February of 2017. The director went on to say that he wanted the film to be as realistic as possible. He realized that even when I'm writing it consciously, that some male opinions may become dominant in the script, or I might miss out on a woman's perspective. And I think it's really important that to understand that he went and spent time and had input from a variety of women involved in police matters in India to make sure that voice was heard in this film. Saloni Batra, who plays the character of Kalpana in this film, she originally auditioned for the role of Soni. Batra had no prior acting experience and her job was specializing in fashion accessories. So she was actually drawn to this project because she read the script and said, I was blown away by the depth of understanding of how understanding the director was being a man and this perspective that he had of women. So, if you do watch this film, to see a performance from someone in their acting debut in such an important role, it's quite an outstanding achievement there from Saloni Batra. The other actress in this one is Geetika, Vidya, Ohlyan, and she plays Soni. And she said that when performing this character, she picked the animal of like a puma for her body language in this film, and the stillness of that animal that it possesses, it creates this alertness at the back of the head. And if you I only saw this after watching the film, but if you go back and think about it, it's amazing that she pulls off this feat, and it actually adds to her character. Because she wanted her character to look stiff and poised, but also ready to pounce because she's always on alert. And that is something that you definitely get in this film. She is always alert. This film did debut at the Venice Film Festival in September 2018, before also playing at the London Film Festival in October that year, before hitting Netflix on the 18th of January 2019. It was nominated for 5 different awards, as well as winning 4 on top of that. And these wins included achievement in directing at the Asia Pacific Screen Awards. It won Best Film on Gender Equality at the Mumbai Film Festival. It won Best Film at the Pinyao International Film Festival, and it won a cash prize of $20,000 at this festival, half which went to the development of the director's next feature film, and the other half was provided to the distributor in China to get this seen by more people. And the last award it won was for Best Actress in a leading role for Geetika, Vidya Ohlyan as Soni at the FOI Online Awards. So quite a well-received film across the Asia-Pacific region. It was filmed in and across New Delhi in India, as I mentioned earlier. Consensus time. This is fairly positive. So on Rotten Tomatoes, from the critics, it sits on 88%, so that's fresh, on 16 reviews. The audience had it at 72%, so a bit lower on under 50 reviews. IMDb also very, very positive on a 7.2 on nearly 2,500 ratings. And on Letterboxd, it sits on a solid 3.6 on a bit over 1,000 reviews. So quite a positive and not a massive amount of people have seen this, but a decent amount to say that this does have a positive recognition across the community of both critics and the audience. And I'll talk a little bit about my early thoughts now, I guess. And this isn't an easy or enjoyable watch, but it is definitely a meaningful watch. It's another Netflix original film that I would never have seen if I wasn't doing this podcast. I'm glad I did see it because it gives you insight into another culture and the issues that they are dealing with. So I do recommend this film, but as we go through some scenes and some characters, I'm sure you'll understand that this isn't going to be for everyone, and that is okay. Characters, let's kick into it. So, as I mentioned before, there are 2 main characters that are really meaty characters that we can talk about, and Soni is the first one. So she's the police officer who is really passionate about working undercover to sort of bring out these disgusting males in Indian society who sort of harass women, and she plays this role where she gets men to come towards her so they can make an arrest and make sure that these people face the consequences that they need to face for their poor actions. So unfortunately for her as a character, she's a little bit of a rev head, so she gets fired up very quickly and is quick to turn on these males, and I think that's sort of her main concern, because, well, not necessarily a main concern, but the whole society and the way it's set up concerns her, because her neighbors, they think she's not successful because she doesn't have a man with her, and she did have this relationship with this guy called Naveen, and this relationship with him is obviously broken, and we see him pop in multiple times, and it's not till very late in the film where we find out why this relationship's broken down, and he seems just like the rest of the men in this film, that he's scared of commitment or actually doing anything for anyone other than himself. And this leads to Soni sort of, she's lonely. She spends a lot of time in the kitchen, and this has been some criticism of this film, is that there's a lot of time of her in the kitchen not actually doing much, washing her hands, watering plants, putting the lights on. But I think it's important because it shows her doing everything except eating. She is so traumatized and so into her work, and this is everything to her, that she doesn't even take that time to eat, and she's not taking care of herself because there's no one there taking care of her. And it's really nice to see the progress in this film where her superior at work, Kalpana, sort of takes on that role. And I think too, Soni's job, like I mentioned before, it's so important to her because it also gives her a chance to be firm and to be authoritative, as well as displaying her intelligence. So her ability to go to work gives her meaning, and it's almost this, holds her ground in life, because she's just so sick and tired of men abusing their gendered power in this society. And she is really thankful for Kalpana, because Kalpana, it takes her a while, but she does see a lot in Soni and does a lot for her. And that leads me to Kalpana. She's Soni's superior, and although she's her superior, she's not the ultimate boss at this police station. So she still has to answer to men, unfortunately. And it's really nice to see her as this calm, collected person who is also having the same issues from society at the same time. She's a career woman, but the constant talk from the people in this film to her are like, why aren't you having a child? And it's really frustrating because she's this respected leader. And it's really nice to see that she has this ability to, I guess it's an ability from what I see, but in the film, they call it almost a problem of building these emotional connections with her workers. And she overthinks everything. And to me, it is a positive thing because it leads to Soni understanding that there's someone there for her. And, she becomes friends with her subordinates, and this actually helps them and helps the people around her. And I think that's a really good trait in Kalpana. And not leading into the scenes yet, well, in a second, but there are some scenes that really do highlight this quite well in this film. The director of this one is Ivan Ayr, and first feature film, done 3 shorts before this, and does have a feature coming out very soon called Milestone, and it's going to have a release in the US in May 2021, if you are listening to this later on in time. So I wouldn't mind checking this one out to see what Milestone is about. Some scenes, some time to talk about some scenes. The ones that stood out for me to start off with, and I think the opening scene of this one sets this film up really, really well. Soni, like I mentioned before, plays this undercover role and gets this male to follow her, and he is disgusting and horrible towards her, and this leads the way for the rest of the film, just to show the audience how filthy some men are to women. And it includes other scenes where men, they think they're above the law because of their status, or, because of the connections they have with politics, or because they're in the Navy. And this just runs throughout the film quite well, straight from that opening. There's this other scene where there's an officer questioning a female victim in the police station, and there's like 3 male officers questioning her, and this is a highlight for me for Kalpana, the character, because she comes in and she just takes control. She tells these men off for not seeing that this poor girl was scared and that they should have just called a female officer immediately. It was really nice to see this firm, in control woman who is able to say, no, this is how it needs to be done. I really appreciated that. Another scene that I enjoyed was Soni and Kalpana. They were talking at Soni's house, and they were just having this discussion, and then it completely got me and scared me, but this brick just goes through the window, and it just shows that this disgust and disrespect that's shown towards women for standing up for what they believe in or for trying to do the right thing. And I really did follow that on, and I liked at the end of this film how Soni stood up to Naveen, this love interest that she'd had in the past. And I'm not going to spoil it. There's a reveal as to why their relationship broke down, and he wanted to make amends, but she is so firm and tells him that, don't talk to me like that. I don't need you. And I think this was a really groundbreaking moment for Soni as a character to say, I'm okay, leave me alone, let me go on my own way. Kalpana gives Soni this message that she was told. It's through a book, so she gives her this book, one of her favorite sort of books, and she tells her, that the message of this story is that the character's life was so inconsequential that all of her life or all of her achievements could fit on the back of this revenue stamp. So this comment that was made to her that her life was meaningless. And I think this is sort of emphasizing to the audience how much of an impact these 2 women are actually having on society. Even though it may seem like they're getting nowhere, it's really nice to see that, they need to understand, even if it's small, they are doing something. And finally, the last thing that I did enjoy about this one was Kalpana at the end. There's this big issue with this person who has political connections doing the wrong thing, being arrested, and the superior saying, we've just got to let it go. And Kalpana goes against this advice and charges this male with kidnapping, trespassing, drug trafficking, and this is the right thing by Soni. And it was really nice to see that she's done this for her. The only thing that I didn't like necessarily in this one, and it's not that it was horrible, but I didn't like the way that they added context. It was just, I needed that context, but the way that the men spoke to women throughout this film, to me, was appalling, especially the male in the female toilet scene. If you've seen the film or watched the film, look out for that scene, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about. And that scene just, it wasn't very nice. It didn't sit well with me. It wasn't a horrible scene, but it just didn't sit well with me myself. Some themes and ideas for this one. So obviously you can probably pick up on everything that I've mentioned already, but the misogyny in this male-run world It's like, do what we say. The men in this film are upfront, they're gross, they are so confident, they just ask for numbers, they abuse their power, they think that they just rule this world. And they do this really well and highlight this really well, that it's not acceptable. And I think it also leads into this deeply entrenched way of Indian society, that not saying that I'm not trying to critique their society or anything like that, but I'm just saying that, the national policies, that they're constantly changing, and the attitudes to these policies that are changing don't really change realistically. Like, the attitude towards women doesn't change. There's scenes where the men just sit in the kitchen around the table, and the women are in the kitchen doing the dishes, and they're like sitting there going, the tea's cold. It's like, these are things that need to change. And the sad thing in this film too is that a lot of the women don't necessarily stand up for each other, apart from the main two, which is really nice to see. But they're still focusing on, you've got to be at home, you've got to be married, you've got to have kids. And I think this is something that the director is saying we need to sort of highlight this, to say it's not necessarily how it has to be. And there's this idea too of this segregation of women. Like, why should women have to catch public transport in women-only transport? Or why should they have to have security guards looking after them? Or why should they have to have CCTV watching over them? Why can't we trust people in society to do the right thing and not be aggressive or abusive or abuse their power or their status in society? And there is a nice bit of girl power too. Like, Kalpana and Soni, they are framed as equals. They hold this film together. And I guess the last thing I'll mention is that these radio broadcasts in the background, they mention this segregation and what's being done to sort of protect women. And it also touches a bit on politics in India as well. So it's just this nice underlying way of including something in the film that not necessarily in your face, but you can listen to and hear the context of what else is going. So taking away from this film, I think that sometimes the thought of sitting down to watch an international film can often be daunting, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm hoping that the success of films like Parasite and Minari in recent years is going to open people's eyes. And this is one of those films that I'm saying you should try and check out and give a crack if you're willing to spend a bit of time and a little bit of extra time, focusing on characters and the dialogue being on the screen rather than just listening. We do have a section on here, IMDb, where we may jump on to check out certain characters or actors or actresses in the film to see if we recognized them. I didn't have a character that I looked up, but I thought it was worth mentioning that there's this scene in this film where Soni sits down with her neighbor, and she talks about when she was younger and what she did to prevent men from just staring at her. And she mentioned that she'd apply the sindoor, and I didn't know what this was, and I had an educated guess, and I thought that this was the red dot that's culturally seen on Indian ladies' faces. So I looked it up because I wanted a little bit of extra context. I wanted to understand what she was talking about, and it's a symbol of married women wearing this dot. So it highlighted to me, how sad it is that in society that something that's cultural and religious and such an important part of society, people were having to abuse to prevent men from being gross towards them. So just one of those little things that I've taken away from this film. Hopefully I haven't bored you too much, but I'm going to wrap this one up with my final thoughts, where I give a rating for the film out of 5 to give us a Flix Forum score. And as I've mentioned, this film isn't necessarily going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. It doesn't move at a cracking pace, but it does open your eyes to the struggles of females in Indian society. It's nice that it's come from a male director, but at the same time, I have to question whether this could have been made if it wasn't based on the observations that you see in this film. So, if a woman came forward with this idea, would it have been made? And unfortunately, that's a question that I've got from this movie, which I wish I didn't have. I think it is an important film, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And I really do hope that things have improved since this film was released in 2019. But I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 5. This is a solid film that you should definitely go and check out. We are on social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we pop a post up with a bit of a question to see what your thoughts are. And I want to bring up the title of this film because it's called Soni. And I want to know what's a better title for this film, because this film is so much more than just Soni's story. This is a film about two really important, strong women. And I just want to know if you have any ideas or any suggestions on what could be a better title, because even if it was Soni and Kalpana, that would have been a nice gist, because those two women are just as equal in this film. So what is a better title for this film? I hope you've enjoyed this chat. I hope it hasn't put you to sleep. And I'm really looking forward to being back again next week for another Netflix original film, where I'll be chatting about the 2019 neo-noir action thriller Polar. It is directed by Jonas Ackerland, and it stars Mads Mikkelsen, Vanessa Hudgens, Catherine Winnick, and Matt Lucas. Matt Lucas, is that from Little Britain possibly? So I don't know, but I hope I'm right. We'll see next week if I am right, and I'm looking forward to that one. Another film I haven't seen, so yeah, could be a good one. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see next week. So thanks again for joining me, and I will see you then.